David Ottaway is a fellow with the Wilson Center's Middle East program and a former Washington Post correspondent. He joins us today to talk about a new paper he's written about Saudi Arabia's plan to transform its economy. David, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Let me ask you, what is Vision 2030? I
What
know
is Vision 2030?
It's not a visit to the optometrist.
Vision 2030, in short, is a master plan that was devised a year ago to get Saudi Arabia off its dependence on oil alone, which accounts for about somewhere between 80 and 90% of the government's revenue. And they've been on this, this dependency on oil for decades. And
So what are there? I mean, 80 to 90%. This is, you talk about even a company town, Hershey, Pennsylvania, has less than that invested in chocolate.
Yeah.
I mean, what are their prospects beyond oil?
Well, they are trying to create a different type of economy. They are trying to revamp the economy so that it is no longer dependent on the government as the motor for economic growth, and to switch the main burden of economic growth to the private sector. The private sector now accounts for 40% of the economy. They want the private sector to account for 60% of the economy by 2030. And then they want to do everything they can to encourage non-oil industries to develop. So those are the two main
And what are these non-oil industries? What are we? I know there's been talk of an entertainment destination.
There's certainly there's entertainment, but also what they call Hajj tourism. They're trying to increase. They have like 8 million Muslims that come to the country every year
as tourists
to go to Mecca and Medina.
Mm-hmm.
And to perform their, what is regarded as one of the key components of being a Muslim, which is to go to Mecca. And they want to develop that tourism. Then they want to develop the mining sector, because they think they have a number of interesting minerals that they can, they were already doing it in gold. They want to establish an arms industry. They're buying from the United States over $100 billion of arms in the next decade. So they think if they can start producing some of their own arms, they could not only reduce their expenditure on buying foreign arms, but create jobs and create a whole new industry.
We have to stamp on anything we sell them, not for resale in this case. You describe the business sector as experiencing high anxiety over this. Why?
I'd say both the average Saudi and the business sector, for a number of reasons. The business sector in Saudi Arabia has always been highly dependent on government spending. It's kind of a crony capitalism. Yes, the business sector was independent, but government contracts were the end-all and be-all of growth and sustainability for private companies. Now the government is cutting back on a lot of expenditures, and they've already put on hold something like $265 billion worth of projects they had sort of in the process of planning or even implementing. So that's a huge cut in government spending on government-supported projects. And this has been really difficult for the private sector. And there's one group that we all know the name, Bin Laden, the Bin Laden group, not the terrorist Bin Laden, but
family business.
But the family business in Saudi Arabia, which has taken a real hit. And Saudi OJ, which is another big company. And they've been laying off tens of thousands of workers, because the government, due to its shortage of cash, has not paid their bills to these companies. Going forward, and with the price of oil, no longer expected to go to $100 a barrel, but to stay between $50 and $60 a barrel, that means a lot less government spending. And so they now are trying to get the private sector to develop non-oil industries. and in the mining sector, and they're doing things also the petrochemical sector, tourism, the arms industry.
What about renewable energies? Can a
Renewable
kingdom built on
energy.
oil move
Renewable
to renewables?
energies. They're behind in that. They've just put out for bidding, I don't know how many tens of billions of dollars of contracts for renewable energy. So they're really going into that field. That's one of the key areas they're developing.
The Vision 2030 plan goes beyond economic maneuvers. There
It
are
does.
social reforms
There's
too.
a whole social reform part of it.
What is the thinking in that regard?
Well, they are trying to open up the society. Saudi Arabia has been in the hands of the Wahhabi clerics who are ultra conservative, and you have to remember Saudi Arabia has no movie houses, no concert halls, no women can't drive. It's a pretty austere atmosphere. Now they've started inviting orchestras to come in, singers to come in and to sing, and orchestras to play.
Is this causing generational conflict?
It's causing conflict. I don't know. It's not always generational. It's a conflict between the ultra conservative
Sort of
clerics
secular,
and
non-secular,
the young people and the. I wouldn't call them secular, but
that goes too far. Yeah.
less people who want entertainment, the youth. And the youth is a big, and so now you're getting film festivals, you're getting foreign orchestras coming to play there, you're getting all kinds of artistic activity that you never saw there before.
What role does instability in the region play in these types of efforts in Saudi Arabia?
In these types of efforts, the security situation in Saudi Arabia is pretty much under control. They're more than a step ahead of ISIS, the Islamic State, or whatever you want to call it, and Al-Qaeda, in finding cells and arresting people before they go into action. And there's been no major, bombs going off or incidents yet this year. So the security situation, while a problem, I would not say is the main issue in implementing this highly optimistic plan. I mean, they want to sell off 5% of their, you call the jewels of the economy, which is Aramco, the state oil company, the world's largest in terms of capacity. And it's already producing 10 million barrels a day, but it can go up to 12.5 million barrels a day. They want to privatize a part of that. Well, this is not easy because Aramco provides all the money for the government, but also for the royal family. So what about the issue of transparency? What about the issue of declaring to your...
What stockholders want.
What would-be stockholders, where the money is going, and,
Yeah.
you have to start making available to your stockholders how Aramco is operating, and this is a problem for them.
So when you say highly ambitious, I sense the obvious skepticism that they may be biting off more than they can chew. What are the prospects?
I've been going to Saudi Arabia since the mid-'70s, and I've seen them launch many exciting, big dreams. This includes the financial district. They're still working on it. They're trying to set up a financial district in Riyadh that will be a regional financial center, the fourth major center in the world. They've got 60 buildings built, but it's still not finished. They've sunk $8 billion into this project. They're having trouble getting people who want to go there. That's one example. Another example is they were going to set up 6 industrial cities. And they wanted the private sector to come in and run them and develop them. And this has been going on since the early 2000s. Well, they didn't find any people as private companies interested in this. And now they're down to 1 instead of 6. And the one, which is called the King Abdullah Economic City, which I visited in my most recent trip, 2-week trip there earlier, late last month. It's only built out 15% of capacity, and even that one is struggling, although it's beginning to expand a decade after it was started. They're having real trouble getting the private sector to play this kind of independent role from the state, no longer dependent on state money for their businesses. This switch in the economy, it's a major shift.
It's not a minor adjustment. This is
It's not,
transformational.
It's a major.
The final quick thought on
Yeah.
growth,
Yeah.
which has been sluggish globally.
Yeah.
And it's 2017, 2030,
Yeah.
13 years to pull this off. Can they achieve the levels of growth necessary to get from that 40-60 to 60-40?
That's an excellent question because, growth in that country has depended on government spending, which has depended on oil income. And oil income is going down. They used to have like $750 billion in foreign reserves. Now they're down to $510 billion. The money is running out. And whether they can achieve this shift without the government being the motor of economic development is the key issue.
The era of fossil fuel coming to an end in front of our eyes.
Indeed.
Sort of.
Indeed.
Yeah, David, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.